Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. First off, I want to thank everybody that has subbed to the channel to help me get to 1,000 subs. Honestly, it means a lot to me. The feedback throughout the series has been excellent, guys. The questions, I appreciate them. Hopefully I've been answering them properly. Pretty sure I have, but everything, guys, I do honestly thank you tremendously. Today's episode, we're kind of just quickly just throwing on those hydraulic lines, getting those connected to the hard lines that I was working on, to the calipers, so we can get the brakes bled. Took out the air compressor, attached the hose, and blasted in some compressed air in there to clean out those lines from potential debris that could have been from when I was like sanding and everything like that. Didn't want any like metal material sticking in that line and potentially causing an issue down the road. Oh, in the last episode I mentioned there was that line down there that was causing a little bit of a problem with me being too close to the engine. I've actually taken it out completely and I've rebent it a little bit to actually hug the wall here a little bit better, and that's good to go. I'm kind of just jumping around on a bunch of projects, primarily because I haven't received anything from shipment. For example, I had Rock Auto accidentally ship me something incorrectly, which would have actually fully completed the brake system, and I'll show you that quickly. I ended up receiving this. I got one of the cables properly, which is this one right here. And then I got this one down in here, which I don't know what it's from. If any of you have an idea, I did quickly check it on Google, and I mentioned like Toyota, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure on that. If any of you are wondering, that's from a 99 2000 Civic Si. Anyways, what I'm working on today, which I've also received, but not everything component-wise, which is coming in tomorrow, which is going to be Monday, but the video probably won't be up on Monday. But I ended up purchasing a brand new fuel filter as well as a fuel line kit. This is an AN fitting kit. This is a 10-foot hose and a bunch of AN fittings in here. I'll show you guys a little more. But I got this kit off of Amazon. I'll link it in the description below if you guys want to check it out. We're going to run a line from the back of the fuel tank to the bottom of the fuel filter, from the fuel filter to the fuel rail, and that'll leave me enough with this 10-foot line to do that. If you guys are doing this swap and don't want to go through this, you can go ahead and purchase yourself either an aftermarket fuel rail or a fuel rail from an Accord, and then you can use your actual stock fuel feed hose. I got this off my D16Y7 engine. That would fit perfectly if it was an Accord. Before we actually dig into that and I build those lines, I removed my AC compressor, set that aside, so I actually have to purchase up a new belt, which I believe is a 37-inch belt, but I'll double check and confirm that. I've installed my throttle cable. This is still the stock throttle cable from the previous engine. What you'll actually have to do to start things off is actually feed the cable through the opening onto the back of the firewall. So that's where it comes in from the firewall. That'll sit in nicely, it'll click in. There's that white tab right there, that white kind of piece right there that'll lock onto the lever itself. So that'll lock in that sequence right there if you are doing this yourself. Once you've gotten that on, you can feed it nicely around, and then there's going to be a point right here on the actual line itself. I'll just quickly show you what I mean. We'll undo this. I've undone this little nut right here. To demonstrate what you'll kind of be doing is there's that little kind of channel right here that's kind of the opening. Line up that point right there and use it to slide in and out, and that's about it. It's pretty self-explanatory, locking in that little extension piece right there at the end of the cable, just locking it in, and then once you get that in there, you'll tighten this down. There is instructions online on how to actually get the idle properly. I obviously have not yet turned over the engine that I can do that, but there is some adjusting that you will have to do, potentially, probably, to make sure that your idle is proper. All right, back to this little box right here with the AN fittings. Brand new replacement fuel filter, identical to what comes on a Prelude with an H22. Top area threading is a 12mm 125, where I'm going to be running a banjo bolt from here to the fuel rail. And on the bottom there is a 14mm 1.5 pitch, which is going to run from this to the tank. So with this AN fitting kit, I have the 10-foot hose as I mentioned. I get 2 of a 45-degree angle fitting. I have 2 straight fittings, and then I have 2 90-degree fittings. Then I also purchased a quick connect fitting right here as well for the rear end for the tank. This will connect to the fuel pump and work its way up to the bottom end of the fuel filter with a straight fitting I'll probably end up putting on this one. And then we'll run those banjos from the fuel filter to the fuel rail with the leftover hose that I'll have. I should roughly have about 2 feet, which will make my distance between the fuel filter and the fuel rail reachable. Starting off, I'm going to take off this tape and see how fray underneath it is. Probably isn't too bad that I can go ahead and put the fitting on, but we want to make sure that that is as straight as possible, because if that line is on any type of an angle and not sitting nice and flush when it's inside the fitting, we're most likely going to have a leak in the future, if not right away. With these AN fittings, there is a lot of recommended tools that they tell you to use or buy. I honestly don't think you need to if you have pretty much the basic tools, which I'll show you here, that I have, which I'm sure everyone kind of does at home. You can do this installation yourself. What you really want to focus on is if you do have to cut that line, you want to avoid using something like a hacksaw. We're looking to do something nice and quick with the cut, so an angle grinder would be sufficient for that case. This is a 6 AN hose, which is the equivalent to a 3/8 hose. These are used pretty much on any custom vehicle. You can go up to like a 8 AN fitting hose, but this 6 AN will be sufficient for what I need here. A good thing is too as well, if you are making a cut, wrap it in tape, and we're not too bad here that we could probably go ahead and try that fitting, so I'll try that. So we're gonna run a 45-degree fitting to the fuel pump. You want to be careful with this so you don't cross thread this. This is aluminum and cross threads very easily. You obviously want to do this as carefully as possible. So when we get this on, we'll tighten it down with our hand, and then we can go ahead and use a tool to tighten this down. So if the hose is frayed a bit, you can actually use a small flathead screwdriver to kind of tuck in those frayed pieces in there nicely, and that'll just help it go in. So once you got that fitting started, I use a 19 mil socket to kind of sit over top of that fitting, and I kind of just rotate it in nicely. Now you can do this with a wrench and another wrench and do this and tighten in that one male end piece, but it's going to go actually a little bit easier if you go ahead and put it in a vise. And before we take it to the vise, we want to tighten this by hand first as far as we can. So this is the piece that I quickly finished up here. I'll get this one kind of just seating inside the back end of the vehicle. I'll tie it in there with a zip tie, and I'll just run it under the vehicle, measure out how much tubing I need, tape it off, make a cut, and then we'll be able to get on the next piece, which is probably going to be a straight piece. So I'll show you guys how to do that. So I've taped off where the cut is going to go. This will just help it from not fraying out so much when we make this cut. I'm using an angle grinder to make the cut. As well, with this 10-foot line that I have, I don't think you can screw up one time if you make this cut in there, because this won't be long enough for the fuel feed after that. This right now is pushing it, but I still believe it'll be long enough and still have a little bit of flex that it can expand if it goes under pressure. Keep it as straight as you can. Good luck. So now that we've made our cut, before we actually put the fitting back on, you want to grab yourself a Q-tip and try and clean out the inside of that area, because you're going to see right there that I have a lot of rubber material in there. I even went in there with the air compressor just to clean out as much of the debris from the inside as possible. You can potentially even wash it, just let this dry out, but get in there as best as you can before you put those fittings on, because we don't want that debris going into the fuel system. Now I put this in a vise, I put a rubber glove. If you guys are kind of cautious about keeping your paint looking nice and clean, just throw something like that in between before you tighten that down on the vise. I have a 19mm wrench right here. So far so good. There you go. And there's a nice seal. So I just got a phone call right now that my shipment of some additional AN fittings have arrived. They really don't stock that many metric fittings, so it's kind of hard to work with on that. But luckily the service was nice and fast, and I got that in like 2 days. So I'm gonna go pick that up right now, and I'll be right back in the garage. All right, so I got my 4 adapters here and banjos. Those just arrived, so that's good. And just before I actually left the house, the other brake cable came in, which is awesome. Thank you, Rock Auto. And while I was away, also I picked up the return line 1/4 inch hose to go back to the tank. I'm gonna put the banjo bolts now on the fuel feed line. I'm gonna link all these guys in the description if you guys are wondering. We're gonna mount this on the vehicle and tighten this down a little bit once we get the fuel filter in place, so these angles are nice, because this is just making it, surprisingly, without interfering into anything. So this is going to be just making it. Okay, so I fit that line in there. This is still like loose enough that I can kind of get it to a spot where I'm happy with it. Fuel feed hose is there, and now I can go ahead and install the line from the bottom of the fuel filter to the back of the tank, so we're going to go underneath the vehicle. So the final fitting we need to do for the bottom end of the fuel filter, basically the in point to the fuel filter, 6AN male going into the 6AN female, and then that other thread right here is a 14 mil by 1.5 pitch. It's actually easier to take off the blue fitting and put it into the bottom of the fuel filter first, tighten down that adapter piece, then take the hose and attach the AN side to the 6AN male side, tighten that down in that order, and that's it. Now underneath the vehicle I just have the brake lines, return fuel line just hanging out. I've already put the brake lines nicely in there, but I have to still do the fuel lines, but I'm probably gonna do that for another night. So in the end, the 10-foot line worked out. Luckily, there is still a little bit of play in this hose that if it did need to, expand under pressure. I quickly just painted that. I sanded that down and just painted that. I didn't really care too much about it, so other than that, the fittings and everything went together nicely. Probably gonna be it, guys. I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. Another obvious long wait for an episode, which I do apologize for. A lot of the stuff I was waiting for, and luckily it came in today, last minute. So that's it for the fuel line for now. I still have to do the clutch line. I still have to do the fuel tank and everything like that. So there's still lots of things to do, and shit, a lot of the stuff just keeps adding up with money. But this looks a lot better, and it's functional and serviceable if I need to do it, and everything actually looks pretty nice in here. Thanks again, guys, for watching, and I'll see you guys later in the next episode of Garage SpeCivic.